Okay, so this should be good. If it's not good, then this is just gonna be a shit show. Honestly, it's just gonna be a shit show. Guys, I think that I have just found one of the most important videos that I could talk about right now. Now I haven't seen it. I haven't seen it in its entirety yet, but I've seen roughly the first minute or so. I heard the first question being asked, and I kind of got the first few words of what Cornel West was saying here. This here is an interview, I guess, or debate between Candace Owens and Cornel West. I have a lot of respect for Candace Owens. I've actually seen this video a lot in my feed, but I refrained from clicking it, just because I watch other stuff. Like I don't click on everything. Obviously, you can't click on everything, but I decided let's go ahead and get a raw reaction, have a raw conversation. And this will help you get an idea, I think, hopefully, maybe, some of the ways that I think. I hope this isn't a waste of time. Regardless, I'm gonna wind up uploading it, but yeah, I'm kind of excited to watch this right now, so let's watch it together.
Hey guys, cops are everywhere tonight. We're at a new bar. Shh! Free speech is prohibited, and in prohibition you can only hear it at speakeasies. So just be quiet, keep to yourselves. Let's listen to these two. We got Candace Owens on the right and Dr. Cornel West on the left. And we're gonna quietly listen to them, but the second you hear a siren, we gotta get the hell out of here. Shh! Hi guys, welcome to the show. Welcome to the pub.
How you doing, my brother?
I'm glad to have you back, Cornel. I'm glad we finally got you, Candace.
Thanks for having me.
Now, obviously, we have both of you here. You had that fight on Fox, both black, one right, one left. Obviously, the first question is going to be sex. Sex in 2019. I rarely discuss this subject on the show, but I wanted to come sort of sideways with you guys on this. I couldn't imagine being a 20-year-old girl right now, or even a young man in college, with the culture we have today of Me Too and feminism, and I'm at the point now where I think it might be killing romance. Because with all this constant need for uber consent, how do you court a lady anymore? Like if you were a 20-year-old man.
Well, I'd have to really use my imagination, brother. That was a long time ago, I can tell you that. No, but it's two things. One is you got the art of intimacy, which we're losing.
Uh-huh.
So that the notion of being vulnerable, the notion of surrendering as opposed to just resigning or dominating, that's being lost, you see. My generation, it was Otis Red and Try a Little Tenderness.
Right.
These days, it's more say my name, say my name, say my name. It's a very different orientation and disposition, you see. But on the other hand, you've got all of the policing that takes place. And so it's hard for people to really allow themselves to be themselves. And you can't really have a serious relationship if you're just posing, posturing, wearing a mask.
Yeah. Well, you were in D.C. You just met a man, happily married. I met a million Trump girls in D.C. I used to do a show there. And they were all having a lot of trouble finding a dude. And you thought, if this was 50 years ago, you wouldn't have women's political beliefs affecting their love lives.
Right. I mean, I think first and foremost, what we're seeing now is not feminism. It's something that's morphed into, I call it toxic feminism. They're pretending to be feminists, but it's not that at all, and it is scary for men to want to date. And the irony is that these toxic feminists, or modern feminists, whatever you want to call them, third wave feminists, are creating men that they don't want to date. They don't want men to act like they have their tails in between their legs. That's actually, there's something that is very unnatural about that, seeing men like that. But we have a culture and society that's sort of promoting it. I mean, I'm staunchly against it, and I think, the Me Too movement is something that I spoke out against instantly. The concept of just convicting men, absent any details, seeing things trend like #BelieveWomen. I mean, these are the sorts of things, and I'm correlating this to they can make me think of DC and the Christine Blasey Ford stuff, like just believe women. That's a scary thing. I mean, that's literally how black men got lynched.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, that's literally what happened to. They got lynched. Just believe the women. This was the allegation, and go out after them. So I will never promote that sort of an ideology. There should always be facts, and that's something that we're seeing sort of disappear today.
But you would agree, of course, that there ought to be mutual respect.
Of course.
There ought to be accountability, and there ought to be reciprocity in that regard. Oh, no, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. There should be accountability.
Absolutely.
It's just the left is primarily responsible for this. They start out with a concept that sounds good, like rape is bad, let's stop sexual assault. You go, I agree with that, and then they keep pushing that until they've kind of killed it for both sexes. Until, like, I heard about this thing where you have this consent app, and you both list what's going to happen sexually together. And then you both sign it.
I've never heard of that.
And you're like, that's what prostitutes do.
I have heard about that, and the crazy part about that app is that even after they have sex, the woman is allowed to revoke consent. So she could have consented.
Oh, really?
And then you can wake up in the morning and decide that you no longer consent. And this is what I'm talking about. It's really scary stuff. And what I always try to tell women when I speak to them is I try to remind them that men are not dropped off by the stork. Like, they're our sons, so we're creating a society that our sons can't thrive in, that our fathers can't thrive in, that our brothers can't thrive in. So I always use my platform to speak out against it.
Well, this trick of using the nice verbiage to make the things sound justified, you see this with Antifa, where they say, we're anti-fascist. What, you're against us? All right, you're pro-fascist. Or even with Black Lives Matter, you go, well, I don't think cops are racist. I didn't say that, I said Black Lives Matter. Are you against Black Lives Matter? Well, then you're against black lives. You're saying they don't matter. Even pro-life and pro-choice play that game. Yeah, you end up being anti-life and anti-choice. And it's rhetoric that's used to trick you.
Well, part of it is, we live in a culture where these categories and labels tend to reduce each and every one of us to just one particular small aspect of who we are as human beings. And so the richness of who we are, and the contradictions that we all are, the incongruities that we all are, you see. All of us are shot through with all kind of incoherencies. That's what it is to be human. But you get one label, reduce just one particular aspect, and then you can use that as a weapon to go at folk, you see. And so, the examples that you give, the Me Too movement, it can be reducible in such a way that you end up overlooking the complexity of relationships, but you want respect, accountability, and answerability. Antifa, there's nothing wrong with being anti-fascist. Fascism is an evil, right? We know it's an evil. We all ought to be anti-fascist in a fundamental way.
I think we all are.
Well, no, you got fascists in the world now.
Who? Oh, in the world, in America. Give me an American fascist.
Oh my God, you got neo-Nazi parties of fascists.
But what percentage of the American
population? Oh, no, it's small,
populace?
very, very small, but there's such a thing as fascists in America.
Sure.
And then you've got a spectrum, because there's a spiritual fascism inside of all of us, in terms of what Augustine called the libido dominante, which is a lust for domination. And as a Christian, I could see it inside of myself. I can see it inside of every human being. Sin, a gangster proclivity, resides inside of us. That is a kind of spiritual fascism. But political, economic fascism, institutional forms, we don't have a fascist party, but we got people who have deep fascist sensibilities. I'm going at Brother Trump on this in terms of when you actually attempt to engage in forms that are swerving outside of the law or suspending the law or demonizing vulnerable people, those are quasi-fascist sensibilities. But fascism as a whole ideology, we don't have a wholesale fascist ideological movement, but we've got some elements of it. The Klan had deep fascist sensibility. Would you agree with the Klan was deeply fascist?
Absolutely, and we have to remind ourselves the Klan, they were Democrats, and I was actually going to make the
Yes,
argument
they
that
were.
I
Yes, they
see
were.
the Democrats actually they have a lot of fascist tendencies. And just in talking about the fact that I cannot go to a college campus and speak about the fact that I'm a black conservative and talk about why I believe in conservatism for black Americans, why I love Dr. Thomas Sowell, why I believe that the economics, a wonderful man.
I mean, I think he's wrong on a lot of things, but he's a brilliant man. Go right ahead.
I think he's right, but you can think that, and we can both sit here and we can have this conversation and have an argument, and we do that.
Absolutely.
But the fact that he can go to a college campus and show up and he won't be met with Antifa protesters, right? And people trying to shut down the speech and threaten the event, and the university demanding that you pay for an absurd police presence that no one can really afford to put together. That's how you censor me. That's how you shut me down. So to me, that's institutionalized fascism that we see every day on the left. You will never see that on the right. You'll never see any place that you go as conservative. You will be welcomed. We might say, hey, I disagree with him, but I want to hear his ideas. So I think this dialogue, I think it's important so that people can determine who they actually think is right. If we don't talk, they're not getting a fair determination.
Man, I gotta pause here. They've said so much. I do want to make sure, though, for appropriateness, that we do speak correctly. Defining fascism, right? So fascism, it doesn't seem like it. It's not going to be cut and dry here. But fascism is a far-right, authoritarian, and ultranationalist political ideology and movement. It is characterized by a dictatorial leader, centralized autocracy, militarism, forcible suppression of opposition, belief in a natural social hierarchy, subordination of individual interests for the perceived interest of the nation or race, and strong regimentation of society and the economy. It is opposed to communism, democracy, liberalism, pluralism, and socialism. Yeah. Okay. So let's break this down real quick. It's characterized by a dictatorial leader, centralized autocracy, militarism, forcible suppression of opposition, belief in a natural social hierarchy, subordination of individual interest for the perceived interest of the nation or race, and strong regimentation of society and the economy. And I want to make sure that we have these noted as well, so that, like I said, we can just speak appropriately here. You humans. I had my video. I don't know if you guys have seen it, about how I don't have an ideology. Like I don't really know what an ideology is, especially considering the fact that the concept of what an ideology is has been so tainted. It's apparently so relative, and the main reason why it's relative is because people have to accept the labels that you put onto them in the first place, right? So then, not only do they have to, and because of the fact that they have to accept the labels that you put on them, then they also have to accept what is inside the label. Fascism is considered to be far right, but even both of these individuals are talking about how the left is engaging in fascism, and really are epitomizing it. So let's say fascism, and of course, right, there are multiple reasons why one would be confused as to what makes this different from, for example, communism, which also subordinates individual interests for the perceived interest of the nation or the race. Communism is exactly like that. Same thing with the strong regimentation of society and the economy. And any one of these things, honestly, even tribalism, right? Like these different concepts, they also share in these similar traits. So you try to put a label onto it, and it doesn't help as much as just identifying what it is that a person is doing and being able to just talk from that level. Because instead of, for example, being able to say, or for example saying, hey, everybody's their own person, right? And we should respect each individual person's choices and deal with the choices that individuals make. We say, oh, I'm not a fascist, or I'm not a communist, or I'm not I'm not autocratic, I'm not, whatever, I'm not a Democrat. So, these are the ways, right? So with our society, right, these things that we're doing, and they just create more labels, right? They just create more labels, and that's what these guys are talking about. And it was important for me to stop here, especially because, again, on this conversation surrounding sex, right, and the issues of the dynamics between the sexes in this time, what the left has done, what has been done in terms of the dynamics of the sexes. It's like, there has been this environment it has become so much clear now, so much more clear now than ever, that perhaps all of our interactions that we've been having with one another have throughout the course of history, in terms of propagating this species, the thing that has been sustaining us for so long, has ultimately been rape. You know, like they said, women don't want to. First of all, it's really awkward to be sitting here trying to, articulate to you every single little thing I'm gonna do to you or with you and all of this. Sex is a spontaneous thing. Tends to be. Love is a spontaneous thing. Intimacy is a spontaneous thing. Finding relations between two individuals is generally a spontaneous thing. And we have to be comfortable. We have to feel. Comfort is number one. You know what I'm saying? And it's very, very uncomfortable right now. And then we see that, well, even when we try to do it in the ways that they want us to do it, like Candace said as well, with a man with his tail tucked behind his legs and all of this type of stuff, again, women don't want that either. You know what I mean? They're highly displeased. There are plenty of women who say, I want a man with balls. I want a man who just, says what he feels, says what's on his mind. Just tell me what you're going to do. Just want him to take. You want the man to rape you. Like, you want the man to take you. You don't want to feel like you have a choice. And as a society, we do these things where we have people like Candace Owens or Cornel West or Charlie Kirk or Donald Trump or somebody, who goes about and they talk about these various topics, and they're like using circumlocution to try to, not get censored, or to try to ease people's minds. But, those are the same people who are going rah, 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 trying to, not trying to, but interrupting the social order and trying to make it seem like they are the ones who have, I guess, the moral high ground or the philosophical high ground. But if we really get down to the bottom of it, women want to be raped. Women want to be. Women do not want to be heard. Like, women don't want to be talked to. They don't want to debate. They don't want to, they don't actually, believe in anything. A woman with political beliefs, excuse me, a woman's political beliefs, or anything she thinks, right, or really says, honestly, is insignificant. You know what I mean? If it isn't singing a man's praises, if it isn't helping being a partner in a situation, if it isn't particularly relevant to the context where we can actually find that it's helpful, really, she is just irrelevant. Like, we there is no time than now where we can see why women ultimately were not, there's no woman's voice in the Bible. You know what I mean? Yeah, there are some quotes, there are some situations where they may have involved women and stuff like this, but there has been, we've already figured this out plenty of times. Like, women do not need representation, because at the end of the day, they are going to do whatever it is that we do. Women want to be like us. Women aspire to be like us. They look up to us. They are our partners. They follow what we do. You know what I mean? They're like objects in the middle of like the whole situation. And I say objects because even they agree that they are objects. But yeah, they're just like in the middle. And, I posted about this the other day, but, at the end of the day, whether your enemy comes through and snatches your women from you and defiles them to their liking, or if you go ahead and you get a grip on your own balls and you defile your woman how you want them, she is going to say yes and follow along regardless, and she will justify her position and she will let it go, because that's just how it is. That's how she is. And her opinion, her insight, her perspective, her outlook are entirely irrelevant. Now, what's important, though, as well to note within this, is that women know this. Women know that they are insignificant. Women know that they are irrelevant. Women know that they will do anything anyway. You know what I mean? And they prepare each other. They prepare their daughters. They prepare their friends. You know what I'm saying? For these various ways, making them aware of the variety of types of men who are going to exist anyway, right? There are going to be men who come out here and take theirs, come and take theirs, and who initiate and rape them as they would like to. And then there are also those men who consider their feelings and treat them with regard and empathize for them and yada 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 whatever. And there's all things in between. There's men who want to be feminine and all of this, right? There's the whole spectrum, and they prepare each other for it. You know what I mean? It's not like women are unaware of even the things that I am saying. But, for so long we have been trying to uphold to some degree this level of sentiments toward, so-called taboos, while literally fighting against the taboos that we have already had established, which is, the reason why our social environment is the way that it is today. And yeah, who is it? It's women, or it's femininity. You know what I mean? Right now we are epitomizing the matriarch. But anyway, yeah, I don't want to get too far away from this. I just wanted to absolutely note that in between where these two intellectuals and even the host here, who is the arbiter, who's providing the questions, they're dancing around, they're talking around this very, very clear thing about the dynamics between the sexes, the thing about our social environment, which is that women want to be raped. Really, what is rape? And hey, we can go deeper into this. I'm sure I've offended some people because they want to look into the whole spectrum of the situation, and I'm not saying that there's no such thing as forced situations, like absolute force, but I'll tell you one thing for sure, just as an example. You had Mia, for example, right? One of the anonymous witnesses in the Diddy case. She sexually assaulted multiple times by Diddy. But, when asked, did you ever say no to him? No, she never said no to him, And then she claims the reason why she never said no is because, she didn't want to lose her job. She didn't want to lose her position. She didn't want to lose what she had. She didn't want to be in like a bad light to this person. You know what I mean? But I guarantee you that same woman, that same person, if it were somebody else of perhaps less monetary privilege or whatever, or just whatever it is that he's offering her, or even if Diddy was losing his like if he was showing like a weakness, or if he was showing like a chink in his armor or whatever, then she'd be more like right, and willing to treat him like shit, and try to take from him and shut down what he has. So yeah, women don't need rights. But let's continue watching the video.
And I resent that isn't accepted as a truth. I mean, the understanding from a lot of, maybe half the country now, is that there's places that Cornel West would go to do a talk, and there'd be Nazis outside Sieg Heiling trying to prevent him. And that's just
absolutely
not true. Those 12 guys are not touring the country trying to stop liberal talks.
But I think one of the reasons is that you don't have a strong right-wing Nazi or right-wing fascist presence inside of the university. The university is very much a place where liberalism is hegemonic. And when you violate certain sensibilities of a variety of different liberals, then they can be intolerant. What you're calling fascist is intolerant. Going against that grain focuses much more on you. Now, you and I share a deep indictment of liberalism and neoliberalism. You do it from the right, mine is from the left. But because my understanding of the severe limitations of liberalism does incorporate certain elements of it, and you don't have strong Nazi presence in the university. You hardly have strong conservative presence in the university.
You don't have a strong Nazi presence anywhere.
Much more liberal than they are conservative. Yeah. No, you got it in Idaho,
in a shooting range in Alabama.
Utah. You got some places in the country.
No. See, that's an assumption. This is entirely an assumption, and I'm happy that Gavin here is going to he's going to give some pushback on this, and I'm sure Candace will as well. I really hope that they do, but there is a huge misconception. And what's funny is that states like Idaho and Utah are considered flyover states, so that further shows the irrelevance of those locations. But yeah, I remember being a leftist and all of it, or not a leftist, but at least politically myopic, and having this belief that oh well, yeah, Alabama, right, and Mississippi, and I can just name all of these Texas. I can name classic whatever white people states or whatever, and just say, oh yeah, there's a strong Nazi presence, or there's a strong KKK presence, or there's a strong racism presence, and it's just not the truth, And it's really sad that we'll still have people like Cornel West, or other people of stature who love to travel, have the ability to travel, go around and meet people and stuff like this in different areas, and witness the ways of the world, and yet would still spread these lies. Because it's more than an assumption. It's not just an assumption, right? At this point, it's blatant lying, and it's offensive. It's highly offensive and inappropriate.
Have some white supremacist militia and KKK, and you agree that KKK is fascist, right?
Well, I agree with him that I just don't know where it is in this country. So I've been able to travel to 47 countries over the past, 47 states over the past year, and I've not encountered or seen any pockets where I've seen Ku Klux Klan members. Do I believe that racism still exists? Of course, racism still exists. By the way, it's always going to exist. There's always going to be black people that hate white people. There's going to be white people that hate black people. But the question of whether this is some organized cell in our country that has a lot of power, I strongly disagree with that.
Well, I wouldn't say it has a lot of power. I would say it has some presence. I mean, they have empirical investigations, though, my dear sister, where you've got over 600 and some white supremacist militia groups, some of whom have death threats. And the FBI keeps track of them because the FBI infiltrates them.
Where are they?
I don't know where they are because I don't hunt them down.
That should tell you that they're not a presence because we're two black Americans.
Yeah, but he's lying.
And we're two black Americans.
He's
I mean, the FBI is not going to be lying. I'm not a fan of the FBI.
He's lying. He's lying. Not only is he lying, but he's trying to like baby her, right? Like you can see he's doing a lot, right? He's not really doing a lot. He's very, 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 very elementary. She's being very respectful. Perhaps too respectful here. He needs some androgens headed back his way. But, this is very inappropriate what Cornel is doing.
Yeah,
well, I'm not saying I'm not a fan of the Indian, but I'm saying is that if this was something that was so obvious, two black Americans sitting here, I'd be like, I'll tell you exactly where they are because I walk down the street over here. They're in Virginia, in this city, in this town. They meet here on Sundays. Every black American that I ask that says there's a Nazi or a KKK presence, you just go, where? They go, I don't know, I read it somewhere. And I think that that's unacceptable.
Well, they often cite this SPLC hate map that looks
the
like
SPLC
post
hate
offices.
Group. I'm on the SPLC list.
The SPL, tell me what the SPLC is now.
The Southern Poverty Law Center has these hate maps.
They're a hate group.
And you look at it, and
I'm
it honestly looks like like post offices. They're everywhere.
Yeah.
And you go, that's but same is true. The Anti-Defamation League will tell you that there are hate groups against black folk, against Jews, against Muslims, against a variety of different folk, and they've got some data.
But they don't.
They're also not considered a credible source.
They're not because they're funded.
No,
they're not. They're funded leftists. They're funded leftist.
Oh no, Anti-Defamation is not leftist. Now they're coming at me tooth and nail.
I sat in Congress with them, and I'm telling you right now,
they're not leftist.
If you saw my recent thing in Congress, I was sitting with all of these professors and all of these people that were, and they had no numbers, and they said, well, we don't know the numbers, but we do know that it's happening. So to me, that seems like a means to control black Americans. This is what I talk about. If this was such a big issue that we had to be worried about it, we wouldn't need an FBI report to tell us. No one needed. My grandpa growing up in the South with the real KKK, he wasn't waiting on an FBI report to tell him that the KKK was there.
True.
They were outside of his door, shooting bullets inside, and he was running to the back of his house. So this now we have people that are more fearful, and yet there's less evidence, except they keep saying that there are reports and there are groups that are telling them. That's what I think we have to step outside of. Fair?
But you got all these different.
Yeah, because he's being racist, like he's being prejudiced, right? He's, that's what it is.
Acts though, sister, on folk, not just in churches, but people with death threats and so forth, and these folk who supposedly are keeping track on the sources of these threats say that they're not just falling from the sky. There's got to be some networks that are in place.
Well, they say that Candace and I are the networks. They say that Jordan Peterson, Dave Rubin are the networks.
I don't think nobody said Sister Candace has had any
I'm
kind
on the
of...
SPLC
Are you kidding
list.
me?
They put some map on it. They said that I was radicalizing people on the internet. Is it such a radical idea to think that Black Americans can do it without government handouts? Okay, then guilty as charged, because that's literally what I go around and I say on stage. I say Black Americans to do it without government handouts. I am now... Across the board, they say that I'm radical and I'm poisoning people. They tried to blame me for inspiring a mass shooting in New Zealand, saying that this person got radicalized by my ideas of Black conservatism in America. I mean, they play really horrible stuff, and fortunately for you, because you hail in liberal land, you are a liberal.
Well, I'm not liberal now. I'm a leftist.
You're a leftist.
I'm a leftist.
Sorry.
I'm critical, yeah.
That's actually worse. That's actually worse.
Difference in your liberal
the difference is liberalism refuses to engage in a critique of capitalism, refuses to engage in a critique of empire and imperial policies, and it refuses to engage in the milquetoast character of the Democratic Party. Liberals are in the Democratic Party. I have a critique of the milquetoast character of the Democratic Party.
Okay.
When you talk about the plantation of the Democratic Party, I'm with you wholeheartedly. I've talked about the Obama plantation. We can talk about the Clinton plantation and so forth. Now, I come right back and say, there's a Trump plantation too. All of these politicians, all of these parties have their plantations.
Well, I'm not.
Okay. Yes, right. And she's gonna respond in a way, but yes, there is a Trump plantation, but let me be absolutely clear though, okay, that the Trump plantation is an entirely consensual, spontaneous sort of plantation. Trump is not trying to control people, right? Donald Trump is not, man. And I think about this, I've met many people who, they want to be world leaders or they want to be leaders of nations because they know that people are dumb. They notice how people are, how dumb people are, how people are followers. People have no backbone. People don't think for themselves. You know what I mean? They're leeches, they're bottom feeders, they're followers. And they want a piece of that themselves, right? And they can see it for themselves. The Democratic Party, leftists and stuff like this, easily, they're also operating off of this. You know what I mean? That's like their entire prerogative. With Trump, that is not the case. Trump operates from a place where he has a bigger picture in mind, and so he's operating on that bigger picture. One of the most evident ways that this is true is in the fact that he continues to hammer on, the problems. He's actually, getting things done. He's actually executing things. He's not just, pandering to you and, being all emotional with you, talking all nice, talking sweet and all of this stuff. You know what I'm saying? Protecting women and all of this. Like, it's not one of those type of situations. Trump, there is a Trump plantation to claim, I'll say, by Trump, but he doesn't necessarily claim such a plantation. He appreciates, people. Because we have to have respect for these people. These are the people who, help to, fund our the things that we do, right? They help to, provide some sort of relevance or credence to what we do. They are the ones who show us. They're part of the things that show us that what we are doing is or it gives what we are doing credence in the physical world. You know what I'm saying? That's what these people do. But there's a huge difference between slaves being there and being willing to do what they want to do for you, and you actually going ahead and claiming those slaves and using them and abusing them. But again, is it really abuse? Nah, I don't think it's abuse. It's not abuse. Just like, again, right? Okay, well, you call it rape. You know what I'm saying? But is it rape? I don't really think it's rape. It's treating a woman how she wants to be treated. You know what I'm saying? And yeah, right. Like it probably sounds crazy, but we'll talk more about it for sure. Right now we're on this debate, but yeah, bro. The Trump plantation. It exists, but it's not his plantation. You know what I'm saying? It's not his plantation. You feel me?
I'm not a party
I
person
don't
in that
tell
sense.
people that you can go anywhere and hear me speak. There's nowhere where I tell people that they should abandon the Democrat Party and go to the Republican Party.
But you got a critique of the Democratic Party, Democratic leadership.
Oh, 100%.
Absolutely.
I do. And Republican leadership as well. I mean, there are people in the Republican Party I still have absolutely no respect, God bless his soul, for John McCain, the Paul Ryan types. I regularly critique those people too, but it doesn't make the headlines, right? So, right, I mean, I critique both. What I advocate for is independence. And particularly government independence and shrinking government. You know, I believe in free markets and a limited government structure. That's pretty much what I believe. And yeah, I'm painted as this horrific monster. I mean, you saw it after our debate. Like, we had a debate, and it's like, headlines, big explosion. That's not how I felt ending that debate. That's not how you felt. I emailed, tried to get him on the show, but that's what they need. They need to make it seem like we're constantly at war.
Well, you're a huge threat to the left.
They sensationalize these kind of things all the time for their own ends, for their own gain. No, but I didn't mean to interrupt. Go right ahead.
No. And I think Candace is a threat to the left because she's bringing blacks to Trump, and without the black vote, the DNC is done forever. Can you maybe explain what Blexit is?
Yeah, so I mean, I started the black exit from the Democrat Party we've seen pretty much the same thing. The Democrats, it's undoubtedly have taken advantage of the black vote over the last 6 decades. I mean, that is you cannot question that. And any black person in good conscience that sits down and says that the Democrat Party has not taken advantage of the black vote, in my opinion, is a bad moral character. And you have to watch those bad faith actors. To me, Blexit is about reminding the black community that we are staunchly conservative. We are conservative. You cannot untether the black community from our faith. You know, I grew up in a very Christian household. You cannot untether the black community, although the government has systemically attempted it, from the family. I grew up and my grandfather was all about the family. These are largely conservative principles now, as you have the left is advocating really for the disruption of family. Men can be women and women should be men, and kids should pick their gender. And if you Google, this is a real thing, if you Google straight couples, all that returns back to you are gay couples. And they say there's something wrong with you if you believe in the nuclear family. And they're trying to grow government. And we've already experimented with that in the black community. We've seen that more government has earned us more heartache over the last 60 years. You can look at any statistic. Illiteracy rates in black America, they're not serving us in terms of the Department of the Education. You know that. I know that. The breakdown of families, single motherhood rate at an all-time high at 74%. You know that. I know that. So how can we stand behind people that are advocating for more government? Handouts. $22 trillion into the welfare system. Black Americans are poorer today than when they started giving out welfare in the beginning. So my perspective is just, we got to try something different, and that something different is getting up off of our own 2 feet, putting our families back together, starting our own businesses, and that is a free market capitalist perspective, which lands me on the side of conservatism.
But you see, exactly, but I think the challenge here is, because both of us share a deep Christian faith. Both of us share a profound commitment to not just our family, but our loved ones. And both of us recognize that when the issues of integrity, honesty, decency, generosity, that just cuts across race, gender, sexual orientation, national identity. Those are just spiritual and moral values. But I think the deep disagreement is, and I think Charles Murray and others have pointed this out, that the impact of the market on working and poor parents, no matter who they are, has been devastating. When you've had profits quadrupling at the top and you got wage stagnation for 40 years, how are you going to be able to keep your family together when 2 or 3 of you, when you do work, you still live in poverty? This is where wealth inequality comes in. And see, when you talk about free market capitalism, if we had a free market capitalism, that's one thing. We've got a corporate dominated.
Crony capitalism.
Exactly. It's crony, it's predatory, 1% at the top, no matter what color they are at the top, even though they're disproportionately vanilla, but we shouldn't have bailed out the banks. We would agree with that. No,
totally
absolutely.
We need real capitalism, free market capitalism, not crony capitalism.
Well, I would just say we need a fair society, whatever it takes.
Right.
But how do you do that? I don't understand.
Well, one is you have to have conversations, to be honest, to put a spotlight on what is not talked about. And if you have taboo issues that you're unable to interrogate and question, then you can't have a conversation. And part of the dialogue is we got this little narrow conversation between a Republican Party, most of which is tied to big money. You got a Democratic Party that's
an
tied to
assumption.
big money, but acts like it's in the diversity and so forth.
That's a
And by
fact.
diversity, what they mean is symbolic representation of well-to-do black and brown and yellow and women folk at the top, when the vast majority of black people and white and women are catching hell. And they're supposed to live vicariously through the success of these celebrities at the top, you see. And so in that sense, you just have to be honest.
He's right.
It's hard to have a candid conversation about these things.
But part of that's our fault. So I take the perspective, so what I believe in above anything else is personal responsibility. So I don't look externally and say that everything that's happened to black America is not our fault.
I agree.
Right? We
I
have
agree.
people that, yes,
I agree.
and this has to do with the breakdown of family. When you remove the father from the home, that's why I'm so strong about dads being in the home. Those kids will pursue that paternity elsewhere. So we're seeing black kids turn to the streets. They're turning to Jay-Z, they're turning to hip hop, and they're idolizing these people. And these people are taking them in a direction that's not helpful to them, right? So the majority of we know, for example, California, 75% of black kids can't pass a literacy exam. They can't read a book, right? But if you ask them trivia questions about Jay-Z and Kanye and rappers like T.I. and Killer Mike, they'd be able to come back to you
Or
on
you
that.
put them in the
Right.
studio and their intelligence, and some of them have a genius that's undeniable.
Right. So my thing is that those decisions, like us taking, welfare incentivize that bad behavior in terms of removing fathers from the home. We have to be smart enough and wise enough to understand that and to turn that down. The answer to all of these problems is not more government solutions. You can't say the government did all of this and now we need more government to correct it. That doesn't make sense. That to me is the definition of insanity. Trying the same thing over and over again and expecting different results.
But part of it is, though, is that our precious black brothers and sisters who are poor and working class need exactly what you and I have access to, which is some jobs with a livable wage. They need access to some resources so that their conception of dignity is also tied to responsibility.
Right.
You
But
see?
we have to
and
learn.
that's what we haven't been able to do,
Right.
for the
Yeah,
most part.
yeah.
And even when you generate a lot of jobs, it's not jobs with a living wage. Even when you have access to the housing market, it's hard to get the housing that is adequate, especially given the market taking over, the gentrification that's taking place, people unable to gain access to neighborhoods. See, I grew up in a neighborhood. I didn't grow up in a hood. Now, we were broke as the Ten Commandments financially, but it was still a ghetto. It wasn't a hood. It was a neighborhood. You know Donny Hathaway's Ghetto. When he sings that song, and he and Leroy Hudson wrote the Ghetto, they talking about love, affirmation, as well as poverty, but it was not victim mentality at all. Curtis Mayfield was singing, he's singing about the ghetto in Chicago. He's not singing about a victim mentality at all.
Right.
He's talking about dignity, resilience, and struggle, but you would admit the poverty was overwhelming. That's partly a result of the history of the country. Slavery, Jim Crow, American terrorism, lynching, and so forth, you see. So that the stress on personal responsibility, I agree with you 100%.
Yeah.
But there has to be some structural realities that allow people to gain access to jobs and health care and resources.
Yes. But see, the problem is, and as they have already articulated in this sense about, so much of the culture being dominated by corporations, right? The corporate world and all of this type of stuff, that, there is not the literacy, there's not the wisdom, there's not the knowledge, there's not the understanding, of what even these two individuals themselves who can say, well, I know that people need jobs, livable wages or whatever. It's not about livable wages, but, people need jobs, you know what I'm saying? And them being in positions to be able to do that, and they don't do that. You know what I'm saying? Now, I know Candace has a team, and Cornel has a team, and Gavin has a team, and, all these different people have teams. I'm sure to whatever degrees, but if you really cared so much about people being able to have prosperity and all of these types of things, whatever, then you would be putting yourself in positions to employ people, or creating situations so that people can be employed, and yeah, you take that responsibility out of the hands of, even just at a base level, having to rely on, a corporation, an S corp or a C corp, to make those roles. You have your LLCs, you have your sole proprietorships, you know what I mean? You have freelancers and all of this type of stuff. again, opportunities. Everybody has the ability to make a posting. Everybody has the ability to make an ad and all of this type of stuff, and create opportunities for people. You know what I mean? And these people are just as guilty for not executing these things, for not thinking about these things, for not doing these things, as everybody else. But particularly if, because they are hovering a lot around, black people. This is what black people need to do. Black people need to get up, empower each other, the ones who already have the money and stuff. And this is already talked about, how like people in higher positions in like, black culture, black society, or just black people who have a little bit more success, they get theirs. They may talk all this about, what needs to happen, when they're on the grind, when they're coming on the down low, or even when they're already up top, right? They can continue to regurgitate the same things that these two people are saying. But in reality, once they get it, a lot of times they wind up just turning their back on everybody, and being selfish and stingy, or, whatever the case may be, unaccountable or whatever. So yeah, that's my response to that. Nobody here is going to say this though.
And I completely agree with that, and I think that's where my limited government perspective comes from. We have to, this is why I support Trump. Peeling back on regulations, I think, is the most important thing that he's done in office. It becomes impossible for an entrepreneur, like I had cousins that live in the projects, who, I want to start a food truck. And then they go and they figure out how they can start a food truck, and there's about 80,000 government regulations and steps preventing them from doing that. So it de-incentivizes them. Now they no longer want to start a food truck, and this is what I love about Trump. So people are caught up in I don't like the way he speaks, I don't like his decorum. I like his policies, I like what he's doing, and so I call myself a Trumplicant. I like Trump. If the Democrats had a candidate that was talking the way that he was talking, then I would vote for that candidate as well. But I think he's the only person that's sort of disrupting exactly what you're talking about, and actually presenting more opportunities, and that's a fact, because now we have the ever in this country lowest ever black unemployment. So you can say it's not enough money to support the households.
We give Trump credit for that.
Right, but you can say there's not enough money to support the households, but that's decisions that are being made. So you're a single mother and you have 3 kids. Well, of course that job is not going to be able to support your household, because there are other decisions that you're doing where it's not meant to support a household. One individual is not meant to raise 3 kids by herself.
Though, and you tell me what you think. One of the contradictions in terms of any support of Trump is he's got a $750 billion military-dominated budget that goes straight to the big marketeers. Both Democratic Party and Republican Party voted for it. That's not limited government. See, when you expand the military budget, you are expanding government.
Okay, so I would disagree with you. So this is when I say limited government, I mean what do you believe is the function of a government?
The function of government is to protect its citizens.
That's the first thing you just said. So that's exactly, I agree with you 100%. So I'm comfortable.
But that means you're not for limited government to the degree to which the military needs to protect us.
No, but that's where I want them to be limited to. I don't want the government trying to raise our children, which is what you and I were talking about off camera. When they step in and they say, now we're going to regulate this, we're going to regulate that. That to me is a government that's overstepping. But when they're limited to military, that's exactly what we need the government for, to defend and protect.
61 cents of every dollar going to the military-industrial complex, and those oligopolies and monopolies are making billions of dollars, some of it waste. You would agree some of it's waste in the military?
Listen to the government. Nothing the government does sufficient. I agree.
If we could isolate it to the $750 billion and we were all fighting that the $750 billion was too much, that would be a great place to be.
Right.
But I think we're pissed off about all of this other crap.
But it's all the other
the trans
stuff.
thing is going to be the end of black support for the left.
I mean,
because they're giving hormone blockers to kids.
Our precious trans, there's a small group.
Our precious trans? Did you just hear him say that shit? Our precious trans. Woo.
Beings who are the most vulnerable. They're demonized the most. They have least amount of power.
Do you hear this guy? Do you hear this guy? I'm sorry, bro. If I don't pause it, I'm not gonna hear all of the ridiculous shit that he says, But oh my gosh,
Cover magazines.
They're not demonized.
They're demonized. Least amount of power. All of this, even though they have perhaps the most public. Look at this super public conversation that we have about them, and yet they have the least amount of power and all of this type of stuff. Least represented, all of this, demonized, all of this type of stuff. You get in trouble for it. It's insane. Listen to this guy.
Everyone wants their kid to be one. It's the hot new
That
thing.
is the one group that is killed more by vigilantes among our
Not
citizenship
vigilantes, the
than
gangsters.
Than anybody else? Are you serious? Yo, my man is delusional. My man is just wow. I mean, you can already see his pandering abilities and how he speaks to Candace, right? But they're in full peacock right now.
They were dating. They're drug addicts
Yeah,
who are
a lot of
hanging
them
out
have
with
a lot
bad
of drug
boys.
issues, a lot of
They're
drug
dating.
issues.
They're dating, they're drug addicts, they're pedophiles, they're all of these different things. But if you say it, then you'll get banned on X for 7 days. Yeah, I'm banned on X right now. I can't show you because this is the wrong John, but
MS-13
for speaking
and Bloods and Crips.
And let me tell you why I'm not talking about these individuals. They're now trying to make this a rule in school that teachers tell the kids in grade school. We're talking about K through 5 that they're allowed to pick their genders. That's where I have a problem with it. Okay, you live your life. You want to dress as a woman. You want to dress as a man. God bless you. I believe that this country should protect
personal liberties.
100%. I agree.
I
will
with
never
that.
have an issue with that
That's right.
whatsoever.
That's
Okay.
right.
But when you get to the extent now that you're demanding, that I now have to recognize people, that a grown man wearing a dress, I have to use the right pronouns, or I get fined or go to prison, which is actually happening in states like California, okay? That's ridiculous. So because I had 2 eyes and I call somebody the correct pronoun, I can get in trouble, right? And secondly, introducing it into the school system, which is over-sexualizing children at a young age, telling them they can
That's
pick...
the media and market doing that
100,
too,
I agree. 100%
yeah.
agree.
Money again from the top.
That is when something
my
goes
man Cornel West is a pervert.
from a personal freedom to infringing upon mine. Okay, I don't have to raise my kids to believe that they can pick their gender because they can't. I feel bad for people that suffer from gender dysphoria. Both of those two ideologies can exist in the same.
But
I don't feel bad for people who have gender dysphoria. I don't feel bad. The thing that you call gender dysphoria, I don't. There's not even really a point in entertaining that. You can have a conversation. You can talk about the feelings. You can talk about it. And if they want to continue to, it's just about like, at the end of the day, if you want to continue to trivialize it, that's on you, right? Like if you want to be a bitch ass nigga, you can be a bitch ass nigga, right? If you want to be, if a woman wants to be a tomboy, then then she can be a tomboy. There have always been tomboys, dykes, butches, gays, fags. You know what I'm saying? Like effeminate dudes, all of this type of stuff. It's always been a thing. I had a friend who told me that he didn't even know that these sorts of things were possible until he was at least in like middle school, high school, and that's fine, right? Like that, and that's actually good. You don't have to worry about your soul even being tainted in that way from dealing with degenerates of these sorts who worry about things, who have apparently been placed in the circumstances to have circumstances for them to even have to deal with having those types of conversations with themselves, or having those sorts of confusions, worrying about those things, giving those sorts of things credence, right? It's better to not have your soul tainted by these sorts of people, so that you don't have to have those sorts of conversations within yourself and have to worry about that sort of thing mentally, or even have to consider it. But upon being exposed to those sorts of things, it is just another blessing of the multitude. It is a blessing. It shows again like the multitude of the world. It shows just truly how abundant the world is, right? And we should have respect for the multitude. And so in the midst of having respect to the multitude, we should also then be prepared to respect what that thing is as well, right? So, because there are things, there is such thing as wanting to die, right? There's such thing as living but wanting to die, and living in a way where you don't want your life. And so, like there has to be space, right? Like there has to be space for people to be able to do what is necessary when they encounter, the various different types of people. It is possible to be somebody who doesn't, who let me say, who wants to be attacked, wants to be attacked, but wants to be wants to be physically, like, come on, man, like, girls be asking to get choked and get their hair pull my hair, spit in my mouth, smack me, blah 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 blah, you putting your hands on people and all this type of, like, there are people who want to live like this, you know what I'm saying? But at the same time, though, the thing is that when you have these different people who haven't been exposed to these type of people, and they already have, like, these certain, ideals about what they feel like the world should be, and they hear about these types of people, and they go, oh no, like, the extent to which we should respect these people, and not respecting them in terms of literally what they're giving to us, but trying to give the opposite. So, literally, like, what I mean is that, again, right, like, you want me to hit you and all of this type of stuff, but, you'll also call the cops on me and put me in jail. You know what I'm saying? Or you'll call, your family, you'll call your people on me or whatever, to try to retaliate, on a whole nother level to come and defend you. But it's like, you want this, like, and you move in such a way as to want this. So it doesn't make any sense. Like, we can't have this, we have to work on this on a societal level, so that first of all, we can be able to have the conversation, first of all, and be as transparent and honest as possible. And then furthermore, like I said, just to have and thus in doing that, then we can be prepared for how we respond, again, to these different sorts of things. Like I said, there's no issue with people being able to say that, oh, okay, well, yeah, I'm a man, but I want to be a woman. I feel like a woman, or I want to be able to interact with the world in the ways that a woman does. Of course, there are many ways in which you're not going to be able to do that, but in certain ways that you are able to do that, and as long as they do not impede upon other people's peace and stuff like that, right? Generally, right, impede upon the peace, and stuff like that. These things can be managed, but all of our kids should not be exposed to the idea that they can just choose their gender, or people in general, that we should not be forced to go through these things. And when I identify you as a male or as a female or whatever, and it's right, and I call you sir or whatever, sir, ma'am, whatever the case may be, that should be your you should be prepared as well to respond in the proper way. My final grades just came in. Oof, looking forward to how these go. But yeah.
Certainly, we've got to protect personal liberties.
100%. Wear a dress. I say, guys, if you want to go put on a dress.
No one wants...
Yes, you can protect personal liberties, right? But there is still a strong sense of responsibility, of intentionality, a baseline level of personal liberty that says that, yeah, you live your life and I have my life. You know what I'm saying? But as these things begin to cross, we can consider how these things go, and I might have to kill you. Or I might have to hurt you. I might have to do, something that, like I said, does preserve that baseline of personal liberty that we have. And particularly one of those triggers is when you have people who say, one of those triggers is when you have people who like I said, try to impede upon other people's peace. And involve everybody else in their delusion. I don't need to join in your delusion. You know what I'm saying? I can take you seriously. We can be transparent and honest about how we feel. That's fine. And I can treat you like that accordingly. But we're not going to have everybody be delusional, with you.
Let's make that leap.
But I mean, it's not. You got the Amish, you got the Mennonites, you got the Baptists, you got different groups in religion, different groups in culture, different Muslims, Mexicans. Make sure personal liberties are protected, always, no matter what.
I agree.
Now, I don't know about this dictate about the teachers telling the students. You're talking about in first grade, second grade?
Yeah, and they're not allowed. They can call them in school. In school, they're allowed to call your son. You could not know your son's going to school, and they could be calling her all day by a different name. They are no longer required to tell the parent, because now they're protecting, and that to me is really crazy stuff. And that's what I speak out against, which gets me earned as a hate monger. And I'm going, do you understand what's happening here?
Yeah, and because that's got to be criminal intent. Like that's like some next level sly stuff, because there are many things that you can't even do when working with children and stuff like this without having the parent, be known. Children are very much protected, but those particular aspects, that Candace, that these guys are talking about here, but Candace is talking about here, they're trying to circumvent something, right? Like they're trying to get around something here, and it's not right. It's not right.
You're confusing children. Children don't. I don't think about that stuff when I was a kid.
You're confusing everybody.
I for like 2 years, I thought I was a tomboy. I used to run around. I used to wear baggy clothes, speak with a deep voice. I was in 4th grade because I just thought the boys were cooler. My mom didn't shave my head and call me Michael. Teachers didn't call me Michael. I was still Candace. And then a couple of years later, I went through puberty, and suddenly I thought the guys were cute. Right, and that's what's being disrupted now that they're trying to normalize allowing children to go under hormone therapy when they haven't even hit puberty, or allowing these children to say that they're different people. It's confusing.
That's really going to make the black community snap.
I didn't know about, but any community. We're not just talking
more
about
black.
black.
Black
white people are more okay. My son's a girl.
Yeah, no, black moms.
People
You're not calling. Calling my son.
Yes.
I don't have a son yet, but let me find out that some school is calling my son by a name that I didn't give him. Black moms will show up 100%.
Yes.
I would argue that the whole trans movement is the end of black support of the left. It's they pushed it too far.
Right.
I think a lot of the left sees blacks as their pets, and they're going to lose their pets. Their pets are going to start.
Yeah, I'm going to tell a little story. I remember I was working security, out in California, and I was doing a post at Big 5 Sporting Goods, and there was a mom who came in there with her son, and her son's got on like pink little flip-flops, you know what I'm saying? They got the little bedazzled or whatever the case may be. I think I might, got a little stuffed animal or whatever the case. I think it was a stuffed animal he was holding or whatever. And they get into the checkout line, and they start making conversation and stuff like this to obviously ease the awkwardness and embarrassment, because it is awkward and embarrassing for your son to be probably no older than 11 or 12, and for him to basically be that word, and the cashier asked the little boy about his stuffed animal that he had in his arms, and she said, what's the animal's name? And he said Sissy. And never
misbehaving now.
They do treat us like pets.
No, but when you talk about just as a Christian, for me, I begin with the notion that anybody, any gender, creature with a language made in the image and likeness of God, they have a sanctity. That's why I say precious trans folk. They got the same sanctity that I have, that my daughter, my son, anybody else has.
I agree, 100%.
And that's just a spiritual truth that I hold on to, whether it's popular or unpopular. I'm just going down with it.
I agree with you.
But then when you move into society, you see, I don't want any kind of social engineering.
That's what's happening.
You're getting folks saying, okay, this is the only way to go. No,
that's what's happening.
See, I don't know about that. If I saw that kind of thing, I'd be critical of it.
I'll send you something on it a bit.
But it's so easy to fall into a kind of dehumanizing mode. And I come from a people who've been dehumanized so easily. Black folk, brown folk, poor whites, gays, lesbians, Jews, Muslims.
Yeah. But what is more dehumanizing, for example, than literally not wanting to be the gender that you were born as? You're dehumanizing yourself. You hate yourself. What is more dehumanizing than not wanting to be the person who you are in your own skin? We understand things are rough. We understand we have, harsh circumstances and things of that nature. But, what is more dehumanizing than you literally hating yourself? Not wanting to be who you are in your own skin.
We got long histories of being easily.
Yeah, I should not have to fight harder for your humanity than you, right? And mind you, in order for this to happen, then we need to be having conversations about that which, makes us strong, that which makes us who we are. We have to talk about our baseline for what it means to love ourselves, for what it means to embrace life, to appreciate life. You know what I'm saying? I cannot dehumanize you any more than you can dehumanize yourself, first of all. But furthermore, if I do try to come and dehumanize you and you do love yourself, right? And of course anybody else, right? Because you have bystanders or whatever, right? If somebody does, then like I said, there should be that sort of fortification, right? There shouldn't need to be this, this trap of, damned if you do, damned if you don't, because you got the legal system and whatnot involved, right? You got law enforcement or whatever involved, so-called law enforcement, and then you make it a legislative thing. You try to make it a law thing. You know what I'm saying? It's inappropriate. You know what I'm saying? And certainly, I say this all the time. I encourage anybody who hates themselves, who doesn't want their lives, right? Who wants to die. I encourage anybody who thinks they're useless, there's nothing worth, who thinks that I encourage anybody who thinks that they feel useless, you know what I mean? They don't want to live and all of this. They hate themselves and all of this, blah, blah, blah. They want to die. Absolutely. As a society, we should be, like euthanasia, personal euthanasia. We should allow these things. Yes, absolutely. Because, we have seen far too much that these people who hate themselves will go ahead about and spread their self-hatred onto other people, and try to make them feel the same ways that they feel within themselves. You know what I'm saying? And it's inappropriate. And it shouldn't happen because you have sons and daughters, right? You have your own bloodline that you're trying to maintain, right? To sustain, right? That you don't want to end, and you give them the choice, right? And they could be making that choice. They could be making that choice, but then you have this situation where you have people who come through. And they're able to spread their self-hatred because they're supported by nonprofit organizations and they have political legitimacy and all of this type of stuff. And so now they've been encouraged because they weren't fortified within themselves the true extent of embracing life. So yeah.
Dehumanize.
Yes,
and
I agree with you.
normalize
But
it.
when we're so determined to be tolerant, we tend to tolerate intolerance, especially from Islam. Like everyone talks about Charlottesville and Heather Heyer, obviously a catastrophe.
Yeah, and I was with Heather just 20 minutes before she died.
You were?
Oh yeah, I was right there.
Oh my God.
Oh yeah, I was standing right there. The neo-Nazi brothers were spitting on us, telling us off and so. We were singing this little line of mine. I'm not clergy, but they were clergy. I'm just Christian. I'm a lay person, and we were right there. And Heather was right on the side. We were talking just 20 minutes before she was hit. You see. And she was just a magnificent human being, very young, very committed.
But this whole concept of fighting
but
hate,
any
which we all
religion
advocate,
can be used, though, brother. I mean, Islam's got fascist versions.
But we hear
that's
so much
ugly.
about this stupid
So does
Nazi hate crap that I'm just sick of hearing about. No one talks about the West Side Highway.
The West Side Highway?
Well, yeah, where 6 people were killed, 6 or 8 were killed by a jihadist. No one talks about Fort Hood, about the beheading in Oklahoma, about the Orlando shooting at Pulse nightclub, about San Bernardino. We hear about Heather Heyer literally more than all of those other victims combined. And every time you see these hate groups where they're out there to stop hate and hate watch and SPLC, ADL, it's just skinhead, Nazi, zero jihadists, zero jihadi training camps.
And quite frankly, I agree with you.
I mean, I've heard the Pulse nightclub. I don't know about West Side Highway, but I've never heard of Heather Heyer. I don't know what he's talking about there, but
And I think that what really.
But then again, I don't go around following mass shootings and whatever, political unrest. That's not what I do. My objective is not to be sitting around, complaining, and finding things wrong with the world. I just happen to see them. They come into my into my line of fire. They come into my line of sight.
Gets really some black people can get very upset with me because I say, you want me to focus on white supremacy when we know that 95% of black Americans that are killed by other black people.
19 a day.
95%.
Yeah.
So my chances, I should be more afraid sitting next to a black man. All right, then if you're looking at just statistics. People don't like that because that's the truth. They don't like that. Oh, no, it feels better. Let's focus on the white supremacy. Let's focus on this area, which basically never happens if you're looking at the statistics, because you don't want to talk about fixing our communities. And when I spoke at the White House 2 weeks ago, I spoke about Tyshawn Lee.
It does happen.
Yeah, but 95%
disproportionately
every year, of black Americans that are killed in a homicide event are killed by other black people. And that's not even including Hispanics. So maybe another 3% were killed by Hispanics. Who knows? We're talking about a slither of people, black Americans, that are killed by whites in this country annually. And yet the focus on it would make you think it's happening every single day. That's my problem, because you want to know what that says? That says that they're purposely having us focus on things they're never going to fix our community, okay? If we want to talk about fixing our communities, you got to talk about gang violence. Because and I spoke about that at the White House, Tyshawn Lee, a 9-year-old kid who got shot point blank, lured into an alley and shot point blank because of gang violence, because someone had a hit against his father, so they decided to kill his son.
Yeah.
The guy was laughing in court. Everybody turns away from it. We're not going to talk about it because, it was happening in our community. Let's instead go out and protest in the strange event that a black American gets shot by a police officer unarmed. And this is the crap that I say. They have you looking at something that's never, ever, ever going to matter, right? That's never going to fix anything, because they know that we're slaughtering ourselves at a faster rate, and that's what they want.
But two things. One is that there is a difference
conversation
between a policeman who kills a person and a citizen killing another citizen, because the police
he's about to justify black on black violence.
True, but they're killing 19 a day.
No. I mean,
the blacks
the numbers,
are like
absolutely.
10 a year.
And we have to speak the truth.
Yeah, I agree.
And so the truth that you talk about in terms of disproportionately black on black violence is something that you have to speak to. But the second point is this, though, that there are a number of folk in the black community who both talk about it and try to organize against the black on black violence.
So why don't they have the platform that these Black Lives Matter groups have?
Well, one is because you got a liberal media that does not want to put a spotlight on black people organizing themselves and dealing with problems inside of the black community.
Because that would help us.
Well, I mean, that's a certain white supremacist sensibility.
Right, and that's what I say. So agree.
Absolutely, but that does not mean, though, that you don't want to keep these police accountable when they shooting these young folk day in and day out.
Accountable. They go
Not
to
day in
jail.
and day
They
out.
lose their
They
pension.
go to jail. You got one going to jail, brother. You got one going to jail at all
Let's
these
correct
shootings.
the record. This is not happening day in, day out. In the year where they made it seem like it was the absolute worst, in 2016, 16 unarmed black men were shot and killed. By rate, more white men were killed by...
It's 1,000
But also,
in the
unarmed,
men,
unarmed can mean was armed.
Yeah,
it can mean trying to kill you with the car.
That's correct. 16, even if we're being generous, 16, you had a higher chance as a black American man of being struck by lightning than you did of being shot unarmed. Okay, white men were killed by police officers at a higher rate, as were Hispanic men. We know none of their names because it was a narrow.
I'm gonna just let y'all know right now. I don't fuck with statistics. Okay, I don't like statistics. That should be one of my next videos. You know, I talked to you guys already about the problem with ethics. I'm gonna next talk to you about the problem with statistics. I'm gonna give you that, but this is bullshit to me.
Narrative. It was all about the black vote. They jump a narrative. They decide who they're going to go after. In 2016, it happened to be police officers. We're going to see who it is.
Even though I agree, right? Like even though right, that like I agree that you know, we have a higher chance of being struck by lightning than being shot unarmed. I don't think that, you know, statistically that's like a glaring statistic, like, you know what I'm saying, or like, you know. I don't think that the statistic matters.
In 2020, this is not about helping to save black lives.
like actually investing, like trying to break apart the situation, right, between like, you know, the types of choices that could be made both by the perpetrator or the person being stopped by the cop, and you know, doing all the math, like, that's unnecessary to me. It's irrelevant. It's irrelevant to me. We'll get into it another time, I promise.
You can't tell me that you're focusing on 16 lives when a more unsafe place for a black person to be would be in its mother's womb. We're slaughtering our offspring at a way faster rate, and we have more black babies being aborted than born alive in cities like New York. So to me, it's all a farce, and I think it is because the liberal media.
But you and I are critical of liberal media, but I think you have to have a bit more open-mindedness at the spectrum and the continuum. We've got statistics on the percentages of black men who will be pulled aside in the car. The percentage of men who, when we went to jail in New York City about 8 years ago here with the stop and frisk, when you had over 90% of the folks stop and frisk were young black brothers and brown brothers.
There was
now,
not
those
over
are not
90%.
those are not killing. They were not killing.
Let me ask. Hold on. Wait. Cornel West. Where is he born? He went to Princeton University. Yes. He's from Oklahoma. He's from nowhere. I mean, Tulsa. Tulsa is not nowhere, arguably, but he's from nowhere.
Right.
They were disproportionately pulling
and remind me where Candace,
over whites.
Whoa. And remind me where Candace is from. Candace is from... She's from New York. She's from New York. And she's a tourist. That's sexy. I like that. But anyway, she's actually from New York, and he's talking about stop and frisk.
No. Oh, not at all.
As they appeared in the crime stats? Yes.
No.
She was actually alive during stop and frisk in New York, so... whether she was in New York is one thing, but she's from New York. He's from nowhere.
When blacks and whites appeared in the New York crime stats, they were pulled over less than that. There was more whites pulled over than they appeared in the crime stats.
But you remember the woman who
Bloomberg?
See, I don't like this debate. I don't like this part of the debate.
Who was the judge when she went through all the statistics and said, "My God, under Bloomberg,
yes,
you had
and she was later fired for incompetence."
No.
She was a boob.
Yeah, no.
I'll say something. I'll ask a question.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. Black Americans, we make up 13% of the population, and we account for over 50% of all the homicides in this country. Is it possible that we're getting arrested more because we're committing more of the crimes?
Oh, no, in terms of getting arrested.
I'm talking
for
homicides. 13% of the population.
We're talking about police killing or being pulled over
for
driving in the car and so forth. When in terms of the sheer number of homicides, you've got a disproportionate number of poor black people, disproportionately men.
Well, we're disproportionately committing the crimes in this country, all of them, across the
board.
board.
No, not all of them. No. Not white collar crime, not Wall Street crime.
I'm talking about violent crimes.
You're talking about like...
See why I don't like this part of the debate?
White collar crimes.
Yes, absolutely.
You're correct about that.
You're right.
It just sounds like there's a lot of disingenuous agenda
That's my
with
thing.
the left.
It's like, just be
and at the
real.
beginning of
But
this,
the
you were
problem
saying,
is, though, you got to have a press that is open enough to deal with all of these issues candidly, and that's what we don't have.
The press is obsessed with the Nazi shit. They're obsessed with hate. We live in a racist society. It's way worse than it was in the 70s and the 80s. We've gone backwards in time. And the thing I hate about that narrative, like I've got these friends, Max Hare, John Kinsman, they're Proud Boys. Proud Boys are a multi-racial club. There's gays, Jews in it, and they all love Trump. The DNC is pounding on them. They're a hate group. These guys are getting sentenced next week, Max Hare and John Kinsman. 3.5 years would be best case scenario, could be 15, because Antifa jumped them, and it was like the third Antifa fight of the night. Antifa jumped them, and they beat up Antifa. And the court said, you beat them up too much. And because of the Nazi narrative, the jury went, throw the book at him. One of the guys has 4 black kids, and he might not see those kids for 15 years because he fought back after an ambush. And it's the idiotic Nazi narrative.
They call me a Nazi sympathizer. They call me a person that supports Hitler. I mean, you're exactly right. They overuse that term, and the problem is that when you do that, when you're willing to paint such a broad stroke that you start calling black people white supremacists, it becomes very hard to take you seriously.
They call it
well, yeah, but we know Uncle Ruckus, and Uncle Ruckus was based off of like real people. There are real Uncle Ruckuses. You know what I'm saying? Like that was really like part of the point of the Uncle Ruckus character. But nonetheless, yeah, I know I know what they're talking about, of course, and yeah, the left is just delusional.
Multiracial white supremacy.
But one of the ironies of Charlottesville was, two things. One, I saw a black man marching with the neo-Nazis when we were being spit at and cussed out.
No.
You know why? Because
He was not a neo-Nazi.
No, I didn't say
There was-
neo-Nazi. He's marching
No,
with
he wasn't.
them.
There was two rallies that day. There was the statues.
That's what I was gonna say. It was about
and
the
then there was the
statues.
neo-Nazi crap after.
And it was
When
separate.
Trump said there's good people on both sides,
That's what he was talking
about the statue
Yep.
rally.
There were people that were just
No,
there.
but-
That were there just
Two
there.
rallies.
Black people that were there protesting because they didn't want the statue torn down
Yeah,
at all.
But
and
these
then they
folk, I'm
mixed
talking about the
that
one with the
neo-Nazis.
mask and had the live ammunition with the neo-Nazi signs.
What, the Dukes, I mean the Dukes Hazard, the Confederate flag? Or neo-Nazi signs?
It was a combination, Confederate flags and neo-Nazi signs. You know, there's about 29 groups there. So it was a heterogeneous group of right-wing folk willing involved in violent activity.
That whole thing was
But
a
the other
bizarre
thing,
shit
too,
show
you
that
see,
we
when-
talk
when-
about
when
way
you
too
talk
much.
about Antifa too, you see, Antifa actually saved a number of our lives from being attacked in Charlottesville.
He just
Because there was all of a
He said,
sudden,
"Oh,
we were
shit."
standing there, and as they walked by, after about 20 minutes, it got more and more intense. Police pulled back completely.
That's what jeopardized your life.
Police pulled back
The
completely.
mayor trying to cause a scene.
Well, this was a crucial factor. I agree with that. Police saw what was going on and just sat there.
They were
but
told to.
when,
They were told to.
But all of a sudden, when there was a charge with these ammunition mask on and it coming at us, and we're standing there, the rest of the folk are in their clergy costume. I'm dressed just like I'm dressed now, and all of a sudden Antifa comes in swinging
Yeah, Cornel West always wears the same stuff, by the way.
to protect us.
Well, let me tell you
Now
something.
you see
I do not. I have to.
that kind of self-defense is very important. I think a right to self-defense is crucial.
Sure.
But listen,
It's
I
crucial.
can't
Tell that to the
let's
victims
not,
of Dayton,
let's
Ohio.
not make Antifa sound light because they are a domestic terror group. They've attacked me multiple times. They've thrown things. I was sitting in a restaurant eating breakfast and they chased me out and threatened my
Well,
life.
that's
And we had to
wrong.
have the
That's
entire
wrong.
police force.
That's
so
wrong.
maybe
That's wrong.
maybe
They
back
killed
in
9
the day,
people in
maybe
Dayton,
back
Ohio.
in
But
the day,
that's,
some
you know.
KKK members defended somebody but to paint them in a light that they're suddenly a great group because they did
No,
one
I'm
thing.
talking about my experience with them.
Yeah,
I got to
but
be
we
true
have
to
to
my
be clear.
experience with
They
them.
are a
Your
domestic-
experience with them is one in which they did something that was wrong. If
Yeah,
they attacked
I
you
was
at
eating
breakfast
breakfast.
and tried to threaten your life,
It's all on camera.
then that's
Yeah,
wrong.
I was
That's
I remember
eating
that.
breakfast, you know?
Well, America's
That's
experience
wrong.
with them is also sending in Antifa guys end up in jail for this bullshit. They end up putting other people in jail. They end up committing suicide because they're in over their heads. And then the Dayton, Ohio shooting was 9 people dead, including the shooter himself. I've counted about 17 deaths that come from Antifa rhetoric
Well,
and
see, I don't
Antifa
know.
violence.
I don't know about that.
That's
They're
more
a
than black
domestic
people that were
terror
killed
group.
by police officers.
Pardon me?
I don't know
That's more
about
than
that.
black people
I
that
don't
were
know
killed by
about
police
Right.
officers.
Okay, look, I have a bad feeling the cops are going to bust this soon. Let's try to get some tangible, hard, concrete things that could help the black community in this country. Give me.
Dear sister, I mentioned
Okay, whoa, before we get into this, I'm going to rewind a little bit so I can hear everything he says. I don't think that this is appropriate. I don't think that he should be asking what black people can do to fix the black community. I think black people should be having this conversation among each other, away from white people, away from other people who are not black. High functioning, and this is part of what I was talking about from earlier, right? Because high level black people, like intellectual black people with big pictures and all of this type of stuff, right? Or just whatever, like strong black people who tend to be able to acquire success. Now I can't really say 100% that most of the black people who acquire success have gotten it like how do I say this, in a dignified way or an honorable way, in terms of it being like based on their own merit, as opposed to like, I don't know, sucking dick. And what I mean by sucking dick, I mean, pandering to white people, pandering to other races, right? Or just working, right? Just regularly working off other people. I'm talking about, like entrepreneurial type of black people. And they get to the top, right? And then, they turn their backs on everybody, right? And to a degree, right? It's like the certain like sort of pessimism about what black people are actually going, like whether or not they actually believe that it's possible for black people to do it, right? There's a lot of reason to be pessimistic about the nature of, slaves. And by slaves, I don't mean explicitly black people, but I mean people who there's a cap on the extent to which they embrace their own autonomy. You know what I'm saying? And part of the reason for that is because they have their own support systems or whatever, right? And their support systems, condone them being idiots or condone them being difficult or all this type of stuff, right? It's very, very, it can be very, very difficult to maneuver with people, to maneuver around people trying to help them when they do not want to help themselves. We get it. We understand that. But at the end of the day, it doesn't mean that everybody is helpless, right? It doesn't mean that, it doesn't mean that nobody is able to be helped, and we just lose faith so quickly. And we absolutely should not be having these sorts of conversations with white people, let alone having them ask us the question, right? And then we start talking about it. Because these are the types of things where, okay, well, now they're going to try to get a piece of the opportunity themselves and make them seem like, okay, well, they're our allies. And meanwhile, they do it or whatever, but then we still don't trust each other and we still don't like each other and all of this type of stuff, right? We have to reveal to each other our capacity to speak. We're not, this right here is unproductive. This is just like, espionage, basically.
That could help the black community in this country. Give me,
dear sister, I mentioned one. There has to be honest spotlight casting on realities that fall outside of our ideologies. We have to be candid across the board. We got to be candid about the militarism at the top. Got to be candid about ugly treatment on the bottom. You got to be candid.
You got to be candid about republicanism. You know what I mean? The right wing, conservatism. This whole Blexit thing that Candace is talking about or whatever.
About the wealth inequality. You got to be candid about the issue of personal responsibility.
So free speech.
You got to be. Oh, absolutely. You got to have free speech, but without injurious harm.
Okay, so Candace should be able to talk at any college.
Oh, sure. There's no doubt about that. Now, of course, see, college is a different place than a community. And what I mean by that is that colleges do have the right to decide who is going to speak there relative to
and they
what
take
the
federal
issues
funding
are.
and they decide that it's only going to be leftist
but
politicians.
it's got to be ideologically and politically diverse. But they have a right to do that. But when it comes to community, that's very different. You have a right to speak any community, any corner, and ought to be protected there as long as you don't engage in injurious harm.
Right. I've never, ever advocated for violence. I've never been violent towards any person. I say what I believe. And I think that you'll find, and this is why I think the media is so obsessed with painting us as they did after we had our debate, is that we actually agree on more than we disagree. I think what we disagree on is how we fix it, right? So we totally disagree on how we fix it.
We have a critique of the establishment in both parties. See, your support of Trump means you have an indictment of the conservatism in the Republican Party vis-a-vis its establishment.
That's correct. I think he represents a new form of conservatism, and when he called it a swamp, he was being honest. I mean, there's just people on the left and the right. We were all losing.
But the problem is, see, this is part of the contradiction, though. But when you come in, and then Trump, his attitude toward Wall Street, his attitude toward the military-industrial complex, they expand. They become even more powerful.
So if my focus,
he has to hit them head on. He didn't have the courage to hit them. That's my left-wing critique. He doesn't have the courage to hit them head on, but he can spend all his time talking about precious Mexicans and Muslims and other folk.
Well, good for the illegals. Got to go. I mean, you know they're harming Black America.
Demonize the precious Mexicans.
No, don't call them. Don't call them precious.
Mexicans. He talks about the ones crossing the border.
He's talking about all of them as criminals, all of them as so and so. That's just wrong.
First off,
that's wrong.
Foremost, I'm going to say this. I'm going to say about illegal immigration. Period. We know that under Barack Obama, the United States commissions did a report to determine who was harmed by illegal immigration. They determined, and this was a report done by both sides, that Black American men between the ages of 18 and 21 are the people that hurt the most.
Especially in California.
Because they're the ones that have to compete. And when they come into these neighborhoods and they allot it, and he's correct to say, we know that the majority of the drugs coming over the border, where are they going into? Our neighborhoods, right? So to me, it is so crucial for Black Americans to understand that an illegal, anybody that's promoting for open borders and for telling you to flood them in are not people that are trying to help Black America. They know that we are the ones going to have to compete for them.
Why wouldn't Trump say that rather than call them rapists and criminals?
Right,
No. It doesn't matter what Trump says. They're not going to accept it. Trump has said so many different things, and they don't care. They're not going to accept it. So, Yeah, that's not good. That's not an argument.
Not rapists. They're coming
Just-
to find to
a
get jobs.
disproportionate number of the illegals crossing the border are rapists.
They are. It's weird.
80% of the
don't
girls who
believe
cross
that.
the border get raped on the
80%.
journey. They take birth control on the way over the border.
That's just
It's
a fact.
just an accepted part of the transition.
Yeah, and that's why it's weird.
Mexico doesn't have room in prisons. They encourage criminals to
Does
cross
that
the
mean
border.
the 11 million precious
30 million.
illegals in this country? You think it's 30?
I think it's 30.
Precious. He used that word precious again. There are 11 million precious illegals. Our precious trans. This dude, man.
Well, I think most people traditionally say 11 or 12 million.
The
But
leftists.
of those 11 and 12 million, what percentage of those you think are rapists?
A disproportionate number, more than they
Rapists
are
or
represented in the
like just
population.
in general committing crimes?
Well, criminal. He says he called them criminals and rapists, so it'd be both.
Criminals.
I don't know, the way he talks about them is so vicious. It's so
I'm sorry, but if
cold-hearted,
you go
it's
into
so
any of these
callous.
sanctuary
But as
cities
a
and you
Christ-
see
as
the
a
amount of
Chri-
crimes that are being committed because
No,
they're
but-
sanctuary,
but-
you can't park your car
But-
in San Francisco for 5 minutes without it getting broken into. Happened to me. I was there literally 5 minutes. Came outside.
But that's
all
been
of our
true
stuff.
for a long time in a lot of hoods, a lot of
come
communities.
on. California was not the way that it is now.
Well, I'm talking about other
and
communities,
yes.
other communities.
Listen, I'm not.
Yeah,
You're never going to hear me make a blanket statement that all people are this or that. I'm not
Right,
going to say
right.
that all Mexicans are coming to this country. Some of them are literal children that are being used by people, adults that are
That's
trying to get in
true.
here. Like you
That's
cannot. He should be careful not to issue those blanket statements. And listen,
He's
here's what
gotta
I'll
pull
say.
back
By the
on
way,
that. That's ugly
but he
language.
has, because you know what? Then he was a candidate. Now he's a president, and he hasn't done those sort of sweeping statements since then. And people are holding on to it because now he's actually proven himself to be a pretty stand-up president. He's delivering results. He hasn't said anything super harmful to anybody at all. And I agree that illegal immigration is a problem that needs to be tackled. So I'm willing to look over a sentence that he said while he was on the campaign trail and look at what he's actually
He said
doing.
a number of times, but yeah.
He didn't say it a number of times. He said it one time in a speech. He says at Fishberries, he said they're not giving us their best people, and that's a fact. If they are their best people, the government would be fighting to keep them in their countries because they'd be driving up their economy. Obviously, they're not giving us their best people.
Well, it depends on what you mean by best, too, though. If it's just best in terms of professionals,
Least likely
in terms
to
of
commit crimes.
education.
Yeah, least
and
likely to
stuff
commit
like
crimes. Is if they were super educated
No, but
people
you
that
got
were
some
doctors and
professionals
lawyers.
and educated folk in this country and other countries who commit a lot of crimes,
We're
too. though.
splitting. I think we're
Yes,
splitting
that's
hairs here.
anecdotal.
Well, I'm agreeing with you that we have to be careful and not demonizing an entire group of people.
Absolutely.
But I hope that you do understand that illegal
Just-
immigration is something that really harms black communities first and foremost, and that's a proven fact done by a report that was done under Barack Obama.
But see, I would want to put the stress not so much on that competition. That competition is real. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
But my stress is much more on, first, the businessmen and women who come in wanting to exploit and walking away with profits that are just obscene. And this is where I'm with Brother Bernie, as you know, right? I'm much more concerned about that top 1% that comes in a variety of different colors who are getting off with obscene wealth and resources, while those of us who are in the middle classes, working classes, and poor fighting for the crumbs.
Well, then I got to tell you
Fighting for the
something.
crumbs.
You're with him, and if he was
I
elected,
don't see Trump talking about the critique of Wall Street the way Bernie does.
If Bernie was elected tomorrow, all of those Wall Street people would be sending their money overseas, and they would get out of here
That's the
as
problem.
fast as possible on their planes
We
because
all
they have
agree.
the resources to. And you
No,
know what
And
And
we
happened?
would see
You know
how
what
big
happened?
a gangsters they really are.
No, you know what happened?
They're not committed
Then
to the
suddenly
country, they're committed to their
then
own
Correct.
cash.
You want to know how
Correct.
we would see it? We'd all be broke. All of the markets would crash. There'd be nothing here because we don't have the entrepreneurial steer. The people that are entrepreneurs are going to leave for countries that allow them to be rewarded based on their hard work. Nobody is going to stay in a country. They say they're going to tax me 75%. I'm leaving. Period. Right? So then you're going to have a system where you have a bunch of people that are standing behind Bernie. The do-nothing people are going to have no money to go around because there is no entrepreneurship. The rich people have fled. It's exactly what happened to Chicago. We know that Bernie's idea of socialist policies does not work. It cannot be implemented. The grievance behind it might be accurate. The application of it does not work. So we have to come up with a better solution than we're going to take it from the rich people.
But just think of what you just said, though, sister. You're saying that Wall Street has got America with a gun to its head.
No, I didn't say that.
Well, you said it. If in fact Bernie were elected, they would leave the country, no commitment to the country,
It's just common sense.
and
I
watch
would
the
leave
country
too.
go under.
I would leave too. I'm not Wall Street. That's common sense. If you're telling me that they're going to tax me at 75%.
Are you saying that your commitment to America is such that you would rather leave the country with money
No, my
and watch
commitment to
America
myself
go
and
under?
my family is enough, but I'm not letting you take 75% of my hard work as a girl who came from absolutely nothing and grew up in a rat-infested apartment.
Eisenhower
No
had higher
government.
levels,
Do
my
not
sister.
care. I'm answering your question.
Eisenhower had
If you want to
higher
answer my
levels.
question, as a
Would you
girl who
leave
came
under
from nothing and
Eisenhower?
worked for everything that I have, no government is coming in and taking 75% of my income. I would leave. It's not a commitment to an America. It's a commitment to myself and a commitment to common sense.
So, but what I'm saying is, so if you had lived under Dwight Eisenhower's regime where they had 80%,
They had
you would have
80%.
left America?
No one paid that.
No.
That was like
No,
a few
no,
movie
they had
stars.
80%, brother.
No one was paying that.
Under
though.
FDR, they had even higher.
I have
You
to
would
look
have
it
left
up.
FDR.
I'm going to plead ignorant because I'd have to look up
We-
because
we'd have to check that out.
sounds high to me.
I'm
80%
telling you,
does not sound
oh
accurate,
yes,
so I'm
it
gonna
was for
plead
that
ignorance
1%,
I
because
can't
it
debate
was
something.
gradation. You know, it was gradation.
I would
It
have
was
to
for the
plead ignorance.
1%,
It
but
was
this
for
was
the
back when that
1%, I'm talking
1%
about. It was for the
like
1%. It wasn't for everybody now.
In infinitesimally small percent of the population. Movie stars, moguls were paying those.
90% it was.
Yes, but I think everyone agrees. No one likes a $500 million CEO salary when the people on the
It's
assembly line are paying 30.
obscene.
The problem is
Absolutely.
when the
It's
government tries to regulate that shitty situation, they make it even worse. The government makes everything worse. You were talking at the beginning about.
So what do we do then? How do you recognize the dignity of the worker if the only alternative is if we do something and intervene, the well-to-do walk off with their wealth and watch everything
One thing we do is
Why don't
close the borders.
Yeah, exactly. Why don't we actually put more wealth back into the country, close the borders, take care
That's
of
not
our
enough.
people first, hashtag America first, right? What he's talking about, and create opportunities for the people that came from nothing like I did to become wealthy.
But
based on their own hard work and their good ideas. I don't need to hate the rich man. I want to learn how to become the rich man.
Well, this is where we have a difference. If it were the case that when we say America first, we were saying American poor and working people first.
No,
We're not
no. I disagree with that. You can't. How do you? Okay, right? Like, if I say, black people first, I don't mean poor black people first. I don't mean struggling black people first. They are included in who I am talking about because they're black, but when I say black people first, I mean black people first. I'm considering black people first. If I say, I'll even go further, right? If I say family first, I'm not saying, oh yeah, the cool auntie with the, blah, 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 first. Yeah, she may be first to, receive, whatever. Like, she might be the first person I think of when I think of family first, or when I go to distribute things to family or whatever the case may be. But no, I mean my family. I'm putting my family first. I'm putting my kingdom first. I'm not fragmenting, it. You know what I mean? And again, and especially as an American president, how are you going to say America first, but nah, I really only mean the poor people? Well, then you're not going to get the people who don't feel like they're going to reap the benefits of that. You know what I mean? I mean, unless they're pandering or something like that, or even perhaps if they already have the intuition from before, right? Like, I mean, have like the exposure and be like, oh, okay, yeah, nah, I understand what's going on here. Nah, if you feel like you're gonna be excluding people when you want to mean, then you're not gonna get that sort of representation. You know what I'm saying? So, America first is America first. You know what I'm saying? That's all Americans. It's not, if you are an American. We have already created the bounds of what it means to be an American. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, man, like, I don't like that. Like, I don't like that. I don't like that.
saying that. No, wealth inequality has gone up.
No.
It's gone up.
Yes, but
the tax
they've
cuts,
both gone up.
Would
The
you
rich-
agree
the poor
that
have
tax
gotten
cuts help the
richer.
rich
The gap
much
has
more than
gotten
it did
bigger.
for the working people?
No, I would disagree.
That
You
doesn't
think
matter.
that Trump's tax cuts
It helped
worked?
The corporations that got those tax cuts, I have two sisters. Both of them then instantly got bonuses and raises because of the tax cuts. I have a cousin who works for Starbucks.
I'm
Anaya,
rich. They were murder on me.
who works for Starbucks. She got a raise instantly. So you're saying the corporations got the tax cuts. The people work for the corporations. That's what you trickle down economics.
Yeah, but trickle down doesn't trickle the way it should. Nah, I think
So I just answered your question.
agree.
Every single person in my
don't
family
think we can
received
control
benefits
the
because of
trickle.
that, and they are not wealthy by any stretch of any imagination. One of them was working at Starbucks. and she got a raise because of the tax cuts. And all of them said,
But how
no,
big
we
was
get
that
a
raise? How big was that
See,
raise?
now you're splitting hairs. You asked me a question, I answered it. So for her, you might say the raise.
Again, and that's never going to matter, because again, printing more money what increases inflation, right? Or better yet, better put, printing more money devalues the money, because the value is in the scarcity, not in its quantity, not in its abundance, you know? And so that being the case, right, then the problem is not how much money people have, it's about what people are doing with their resources to begin with. You know what I'm saying? And that's where the conversation starts, man. That's really what the conversation is about. It's not about, you know, your so-called livable wage and all of this type of stuff, because it's going to keep on going up the more you keep trying to just arbitrarily, you know, put the numbers up, you know?
It's small, okay? It was for her. It was
very
$1.
small, but the raise at the top.
But to her,
the taxes that they got at the top were gargantuan. Then we got your precious sister getting a little tax, getting a little increase.
She was happy about it. So you.
Well, no,
so,
we're not
so,
talking about people
no,
being happy. People can be happy for all kinds of
She was
things.
happy
And
about
a bonus.
it. So my
a bonus and a raise. Hey.
sister was happy about her bonus. My cousin was happy about her raise at Starbucks. My older sister was happy about her bonus. So we don't need Bernie to be aggrieved for them when they're happy.
Thatcher used to talk about this, where they said the gap is the worst it's ever been. And Thatcher goes, yes, the gap is bigger now, but the poor are making more money. So yes, the gap increases and the rich are richer, but the poor also got richer.
Well, you got to look
and a
at
lot of lefties would rather the gap was smaller and both were poor
They want
than for this to be
their
up
idea,
here.
Their idea of equality is
we
everybody
just-
be poor.
Oh, no,
Every look
that's
at every
not true.
policy
That's
that Bernie
not true.
is pitching. It basically means we will not have equality until everyone is poor.
But Bernie is not calling for absolute equality. He's calling for fairness. He doesn't want everybody to
That's
have
not
exactly
fair.
the same
You can't
thing.
rob people. You can't rob people because they made it and they were successful. And by the way, he's not saying just the corporations. He's talking about people that live within a certain income bracket, right? And I refuse, as someone that has worked for everything that that I have, someone that travels 6 days a week to work, I refuse to give my money up for people that I know. I have relatives that are on welfare, that sit on their butts all day and do absolutely nothing. I'm not doing that. I'm sorry.
But you have to agree, most of the money that we pay to the government by means of taxes go to the military. It's 61 cents for every dollar. When you pay taxes, the first person you look at ought not be the person on welfare. The first person you look at ought to be Pentagon, State Department, marketeers, oligopolies, monopolies who have contracts making gobs of money with guns.
Okay, so let's just shrink it all. Let's shrink it all.
If we could shrink the military section of the budget, now in order to do that,
welfare.
we'd have to go against
And
Trump.
welfare.
We got to go against
And
Trump for
welfare.
that.
And welfare. I'm sorry.
But we hardly even have a collective right to welfare anymore after Bill Clinton in 1996. That's what he
talking
did.
about?
He undercut the right of citizens to have an automatic
what's
right
great
to
about
welfare.
municipalities-
So they got different programs that's in place. But it's no longer welfare as traditionally understood. That he ended welfare as we traditionally understand it. But when you talk about the corporate welfare at the top, that has been increasing exponentially, and they are corrupt elites who have politicians in both parties who they are controlling.
Trump is not getting controlled right now. That's pretty obvious.
He's a stick of dynamite.
He can't get a fair shake in the media, and that lets you know that he's going against
Well, no.
corporate interests.
The media is not the place to look, because the media has its own blindness in terms of militarism. Has the media said anything about the 7 wars that we're involved in? 26,172 bombs the last year of Obama in 7 countries. The bombing that's taking place right now,
They would never
won't say
say
anything
against Obama.
Well, no.
Don't be foolish.
No. We talking about MSNBC won't say anything.
No one.
Fox would say something against Obama, but Fox doesn't have a critique of militarism either.
No, I haven't heard a
Why?
lot of
Because Trump himself has a militaristic dimension. This is where we go back to our disagreement. He's got a strong militaristic disagreement. Fox is very much more and more an extension of certain crucial voices in Fox, an extension of Trump. MSNBC was an extension of Obama. You got 2 state presses with no serious public conversation. None of them talking about the wars. None of them talking about Afghanistan. None of them talking about drones. None of them talking about surveillance. None of them talking about the national security state. Now, look at the discussion these days about whistleblowers. Isn't it interesting to see the Democrats all concerned about whistleblowers now? Under the Democrats, they sending whistleblowers to jail like this. These are the worst person. I was at the trial of Manny in Maryland, right? He was demonized like I don't know what. He was just one example. There's a host of others too. Now you get a whistleblower against Trump, and they acting like whistleblowers is the best thing since Jesus. You say, wait a minute, this hypocrisy is overwhelming.
Well, can we at least agree on that? We all like all whistleblowers of all types.
Well, no, we don't have to like all of them, but at least you had to have a credible
They're
analysis
actual
of each
whistleblowers.
one.
I want
there
total
are some real
transparency.
ones. There are some real ones.
Everywhere.
We want to know what's going on behind those closed doors.
Yes. Uh-oh, cops.
Oh, good God Almighty. Oh,
That was good. That was great. Man, I'm very, very happy that video happened. You know, shout out to Cornel West and Candace Owens for, you know, doing the damn thing. Whoa, my face just got really big. Let me go ahead and hit this real quick. We'll turn this off. Yeah, so I don't know, you know, we talked about some things here. We got a little bit you know, extreme, I guess, but you know, it's not extreme. It's not extreme, you know, all this political talk, all this politics talk. You know what I mean? They say again, right? Let's just consider. We've always had as a taboo, you know, talking about politics with one another. And again, in no time than now can we illustrate how irrelevant or how harmful talking about politics is for our public, right? Because again, right, like our women don't really care about our political beliefs. Our women don't care. They don't care about their own political beliefs. You know what I mean? But you know, they do know that we go back and forth and we have these different debates and people act strongly and you try to have these points and you can, you know, dig information and all of this type of stuff. But you know, like I'm sure you guys have seen that. Actually, I doubt you guys have seen that. I tend to see everything in advance. But you do see though that there are a lot of interracial couples, and there are plenty of these interracial couples that exist where, for example, if, and I'm going to use black people, if you have a black woman on a white man, or not just a white man, but I'm going to say black woman, I'm going to keep it on black and white. So you have a black woman who's with a white man, and you know, the white man says he's racist, you know, and the racism is fetishized in that way, and she's like, oh yeah, you know, he's bold, he's gonna say what he thinks, you know what I'm saying, he's you know, oh, he's racist, oh man, that's like edgy, right? And you like that, right? The same way there's gonna be black men, right? I mean, we've had Cameron who's gone ahead and acknowledged it even for himself, but you know, black men with a white woman, right? And you know, yeah, you like this nigger dick, you know what I'm saying, you like, you know what I mean, blah blah blah, blah, call me nigga, all, you know, all of that type of shit. So you know, talking about these sorts of things are really, I mean, they're needed, right? And they're going to be needed, especially considering, you know, the veil has been dropped in terms of the boundary being pushed in terms of talking about these taboos, so that we can get back to, you know, what really matters, or whatever, just back to everything else. But yeah, you know, your political beliefs don't matter. You know, there's a reason why we have considered, you know, talking about these things, you know, to be taboo, because they're harmful, and they are harmful. Get out there, man. Fuck something. Shout out to Candace Owens. I love Candace Owens. She is one of those women who epitomize, who exemplify, you know, the type of women that we need here in our environment, to fight for the integrity of what it means to be a woman. And of what it means to be a woman, and you know, that's it. She really does a fantastic job. I love Candace Owens. I'm a huge fan of her. I follow her on like all my social medias. Cornel West, I don't know as much about him. I know that he's a respectable dude. I've seen him a lot over the years, but I do appreciate him providing his insight as well in this debate. You know, again, illuminating these different sorts of ideologies, perspectives of philosophies, ways, you know, to see the world. And of course to Gavin as well. Shout out to Gavin. I've seen Gavin around. I'm familiar with his face and his facial hair. But yeah, man, you know, I wonder what you guys think about, you know, the things that have been articulated here. And man, I need to make these. I need to make these videos on, you know, this concept of rape, how women want to be treated, and also with my disdain for statistics. Yeah, we got to talk about these things. But in the meantime, y'all have a wonderful, wonderful day. I hope you enjoyed this video. Like, subscribe, comment, and put honey mustard on your chicken nuggets. Okay, golly. Sheesh.